Inside a grand cathedral, sunlight streamed through the towering stained glass windows, bathing the altar in a radiant glow. There, Prince Sarius stood frozen in disbelief, his eyes locked on the figure beside him, a stunning woman dressed in a bridal gown. His mind screamed in protest, though his lips made no sound, demanding to know what madness had brought him to this moment. Humiliation and disbelief warred within him. He recalled his years of loneliness, mocked in whispers as the Winter Bear, the third son who had reached the age of 25 without finding a bride. And yet now, standing beside him, was a bride so radiant it nearly left him breathless. The silver-haired woman placed a delicate hand over her heart, her voice soft and hesitant as she asked if something troubled him. Sarius' face flushed crimson as frantic thoughts whirled through his mind. He marveled at her beauty, her hair like flowing strands of moonlight, her skin flawless and pale. Overcome, he struggled to process the truth. A woman like this was to be his wife. Noticing his flustered state, she asked if his discomfort stemmed from her appearance. The prince's panic erupted. He waved his hands, shouting in a voice too loud and broken to control. He insisted that she had misunderstood. It wasn't displeasure at all. Her loveliness was simply overwhelming. He stammered, tripping over his words, his composure unraveling as he declared himself unworthy of her presence. His tone alternated between frantic denial and desperate pleas for her to understand. Before the situation could spiral further, a composed woman nearby, likely a lady-in-waiting, addressed them both with calm authority. She reminded them that today marked only their engagement ceremony, and that while they would live together until their formal wedding 6 months later, any improper conduct was forbidden. The declaration left Sarius inwardly screaming, his heart and mind fraying at the edges. Could his sanity endure the months ahead with such temptation at his side? In the distance, the image of his castle loomed large, mocking him as his turmoil deepened. The story then slipped backwards 3 months earlier. A carriage clattered down a dirt road toward a majestic palace. Inside, the queen sat with a fan in hand, her tone light as she expressed excitement for their arrival. Sarius, sitting stiffly across from her, gave a dutiful response while staring out the window with grim resolve. He recalled how they had been summoned to attend the engagement of the crown prince of the Luminous Kingdom. For his mother, the reception was the true purpose of the journey, her plan for arranging his marriage. Something had felt wrong to him from the beginning. Why bring him, the overlooked third son, instead of his father or elder brother, the heir apparent? He introduced his family in his thoughts. The dignified crown prince Leonius, eldest brother and heir to the throne; Michaela, the second son who had wed into another nation and carried a beauty almost ethereal, inherited from their mother. And then there was himself, unpopular, rough, and branded by an unkind world. Sarius reflected on his own reputation. Resembling his rugged father, King Tydros, he had earned a fearsome nickname while leading winter patrols against rebels and raiders, the Winter Bear. Though it spoke of strength, the moniker clung to him like a curse. He remembered the sneers of city girls, recoiling from his unshaven, wild appearance, dismissing him as filthy, frightening, and undesirable. He argued with himself that he was not as foul as they thought, yet his reputation had long since sealed his fate. Frustration and weariness colored his thoughts. He only wished to escape this ordeal quietly. But everything changed on that fateful day. Inside a glittering hall, the engagement ceremony of the luminous crown prince was suddenly derailed by his shocking declaration. The engagement was broken. Gasps spread like wildfire through the gathered nobility. Sarius' eyes widened, confusion knotting his brow while his mother remained perfectly serene. The young prince demanded an explanation, furious at the spectacle unfolding. Arios Luminous, the crown prince of that land, stood with a smug air beside a woman named Mael, whom he embraced openly. Her status was no secret. She was from a baron's family and known publicly as his mistress. Meanwhile, the true fiancée, Lady Situin, stood veiled and silent. Sarius' thoughts turned grim. Rumor had long said the crown prince and Mael had lived together for years. To dismiss his betrothed so coldly after such intimacy with another, how unbearable the humiliation must be for the poor veiled bride. The crown prince's voice thundered again. He accused Lady Situen of cruelty toward Mael. He condemned her for ignoring her, for excluding her during gatherings, and for treating her as an outcast. Sarius clenched his fists in frustration. Such charges were absurd. Protocol itself forbade a baron's daughter from mingling freely with royals at private tea parties. Arios and Mael spoke as though they were ignorant of the very structure of their world. The accusations grew more ridiculous. Mael, tears shimmering in her eyes, claimed to have been deliberately shoved while dancing. Saryu muttered inwardly that it was just as likely she had been the one who stumbled. Around the hall, the nobility shifted, their expressions cold as they watched the crown prince degrade himself with such pettiness. Saryu's gaze drifted to Lady Situan, her silence unbroken beneath the veil. He wondered if she had resigned herself, deeming protest pointless. Then his mother's voice broke through, calm yet decisive. She reminded him that he had no lover, and when he agreed, she declared without hesitation that they would take Lady Situan instead. Stunned, Saryu stared at her in disbelief. It was as if she were selecting a trinket at a market stall. He groaned inwardly at her casual tone, exasperation etched into every thought. Meanwhile, the crown prince pressed his cruelty further. He sneered that Lady Situan's heart was ugly, her appearance unsuitable for a queen, and that he could never marry such a woman. His insults echoed through the hall, cutting deeper than any blade. Saryu could bear it no longer. Fury blazed in his chest as he stepped forward, demanding the crown prince retract his words at once. The entire assembly erupted in support, their voices rising in agreement with Saryu's condemnation. Arios faltered, rage flickering across his face as the weight of the hall turned against him. Amid the uproar, Lady Situan finally stirred, her quiet voice tinged with confusion as she asked why he would intervene on her behalf. Saryu met her gaze beneath the veil, his expression unreadable, even as the tension around them reached a breaking point. The tale paused there, the air heavy with unfinished words and the promise of what was yet to come.
Atsuhito. The name felt unfamiliar to Saryu, and he wondered what language it might come from. Besides, this should be the first time he and she had ever met. Prince Arios held Mail's hand firmly, declaring with resolute determination that no matter what anyone said, his decision would not change. The engagement was broken off. As he was saying that, King Noi roared in fury, veins bulging on his forehead. The sudden eruption startled Mail and Arios alike, while Saryu, clad in his uniform, winced and covered his ears against the shouting.
Father, Arios muttered under his breath, fear flickering in his eyes.
King Noi turned toward Lord Barimoa. He pleaded with deep bows for forgiveness.
Lord Barimoa, face stern and unreadable, replied that there was no need for apologies. He would take his foolish daughter home himself. Lord Barimoa led Sitoen. Let's go home, he said simply, to the kingdom of Tanya. King Noi wrung his hands, worry etched deep on his face. Saryu watched silently. His thoughts conflicted. So that was Miss Sitoen's father. The kingdom of Tanya was rich in minerals. Losing this engagement would be a blow to the nation. Surely King Noi must want to stop it at any cost. But with the crown prince acting so recklessly, his expression darkened. Then, unexpectedly, his mother stepped forward. Dressed in an elaborate gown and hat, holding her fan with elegance, she approached them. May I? Saryu blinked in surprise. Mother. She gestured for an escort. Ah, an escort, he realized, offering his arm. Both King Noi and Lord Barimoa looked surprised. Queen Tidros regarded Lord Barimoa with a polite smile, reminding him they had last met at the evening party in the Caravan Kingdom. Lord Barimoa bowed slightly in return, saying he was honored. Turning toward King Noi, the queen inquired whether the engagement was truly to be broken off. No, the king denied frantically, waving his hands, but Lord Barimoa's stern voice repeated that breaking it off was indeed final. He would take his foolish daughter home. Despair twisted King Noi's face. Queen Tidros fanned herself delicately, her gaze sharp. She imagined what poor treatment it must be for a young lady, and inwardly confessed she would have struck her son if she had not stepped in. Turning to Saryu, still veiled, the queen complimented her bearing, impressed by her composed demeanor. She asked whether Sitoen spoke Tidros. Sitoen admitted she was inexperienced, but able to manage daily life. Saryu thinking how modest she is. Even her pronunciation is quite good, as expected of someone to be raised to be a crown princess. For royalty, learning for negotiations with other countries is essential. Mail glanced up at Arios. What were they saying, she asked. Arios leaned down with a smile, whispering that Mail didn't need to know. Saryu pondered silently why his mother was asking such questions. Queen Tidros addressed Lord Barimoa with a bold proposal to welcome his daughter as a companion to her foolish son, gesturing towards Saryu. The prince stiffened, his mind screaming, forget backing off. Being a third son with lower standing, raising a daughter trained to be a crown princess was no small matter. His mind ran wild, imagining himself as both a handsome, cute man and as a rugged bear, thinking, it's not just lowering, but it's him we are talking about. The bear man with a lower losing streak in death, and does his mother have some kind of filter that makes him look like a handsome, cute guy? Lord Barimoa replied firmly that he would need to consult the king of Tania first. Queen Tidros nodded, but Lord Barimoa's gaze fell on Saryu. As a father, rather than a ruler, he wished to entrust his daughter to the prince who had stood up for her honor. Saryu's eyes widened in surprise. He hesitated, explaining that he was not skilled in court matters and had little experience with women, having spent most of his life with the Knight Order. As he is the third son, though I have been granted a duke title, but he can't hope for anything more than that.
Queen Tidros looked bewildered, thinking, what is that child saying? But Saryu stepped forward, earnestly wanted to make that clear, then begging that please don't go and decide for the young lady. Even if he receives a rejection, I won't be hurt or bothered in the least. So please make sure the young lady's opinion be prioritized. Lord Barrymore regarded him with a smile, then said something about his nickname being famous in his country too. And Lord Barrymore, smirking, confirmed it was the Winter Bear of Tidros and thanked him for defending his daughter. 2 months later, the imposing building stood under a vast sky. Saryu read the sudden formal engagement proposal from the Kingdom of Tania and thought, flustered that he had been sure it would be rejected. Furious preparations followed, guided by his adjutant Raoul, whose repeated orders left Saryu exhausted. When the day of the ceremony arrived, he had yet to see Miss Sitowen's face. His elder brother remarked dryly, it was an unexpected find, and it was fortunate that Crown Prince was an idiot. Her name was Sitowen Barrymore, daughter of the Tanian royal line. 2 years ago, she had come to Luminous for bridal training, though Crown Prince Arios had disliked her appearance. Saryu's brother joked darkly that it was mutual. Saryu's thoughts turned with sharp begrudging. My brother has such a foul heart. His elder brother laughed softly, adding with a grin that Saryu shouldn't get his hopes up about her face either. Saryu couldn't help but wonder if she expected much from his appearance. And yet, despite all he had been told, there she stood, a beautiful young woman with long, flowing hair adorned in an intricate veil and elegant jewelry. Her wide, innocent eyes looked forward, framed by delicate lace that seemed to catch the light and soften it, as though she glowed from within. Snapping back to reality, Saryu's eyes widened, his mind scrambling.
Where is this girl's ugliness?
He thought, utterly flustered. Sitowen looked at him with concern, asking if he was alright. Overwhelmed, he called for his family to gather around him. His brother and Raoul commented quietly on her beauty, while Saryu panicked aloud about what to do. Saryu's gaze fell on the young lady, his thoughts stammering over the moment. The engagement ceremony loomed in his mind, and his elder brother's voice cut through his haze, reminding him not to keep his fiancée waiting, for the ceremony was still ahead. Standing before her, tension clung to him like a second skin. Somewhere deep within, a voice reminded him to kiss her forehead. Embarrassment burned across his cheeks as he chastised himself for losing composure earlier, confessing silently that he was in a panic. Her sheer cuteness had thrown him completely off balance. Summoning whatever dignity remained, he stammered an apology and asked to be excused. The young lady simply responded with a gentle yes, closing her eyes in serene acceptance, her calmness broken only by a soft, drawn-out hum that drifted through the air. His mind spiraled again. Her cuteness was utterly defenseless, and her defenselessness was unbearably cute. The destructive power of her very existence seemed sinful. At that moment, he imagined a tiny white ferret-like creature which appeared beside her, its presence stirring a flurry of odd thoughts in him. Was it a rabbit from its snowy mountains? Or perhaps a white marten with round eyes and a softness that invited touch? He quickly scolded himself for such wandering thoughts, especially those involving Miss Saito and skin. Resolute, he leaned forward, determined to cast aside impurities, and kissed her forehead. His face flushed. She smiled sweetly, her eyes sparkling, while he get knocked out in embarrassment. Raoul called his name. He gazed out at the grand building. Anxious and longing mingled in his expression. He wondered, will his sanity survive the 6 months until the wedding? That night, the engagement ceremony somehow managed to conclude without incident. Raoul dabbed at the corner of his eye. He insisted it wasn't tears, only that he was happy his captain had finally gotten engaged. A man nearly 30, Raoul had been raised alongside Saryu like a brother, and now served as vice captain of the Night Order. He used to joke that he could never marry before his captain, because leaving Saryu behind felt unthinkable. The man was reasonably popular, but well, reasonably popular was all. With a bright grin, Raoul declared that now he could finally think of marriage for himself. Raoul only laughed louder, crowing that his teasing had been worth it. After all, their captain was hopeless when it came to women too. Too close and too earnest for his own good. Saryu mumbled an apology, looking thoroughly embarrassed. Saryu leaned back, letting out a quiet breath. That aside, he needed to think about what came next. In the back of his mind, his elder brother's voice replayed with almost comical clarity, giving him the warning, do not make any mistakes. Absolutely not. Leonius, the eldest, had delivered it as if it were a royal command. By order of King Tanya himself, the couple must live together immediately after the engagement. It was partly to avoid another broken betrothal, but also to prevent any scandal during the sacred blessing ceremony. A bride arriving with a swollen belly would be disastrous. Saryu bristled, his voice rising. His brother worried far too much.
How many times did he need to hear it? Leonius, unfazed, reminded him of his behavior at the dinner party. Saryu's sly grin betrayed him. Yes, he had looked smug the entire evening, as though silently boasting that his wife was the cutest in the world. Their second brother, Michela, chimed in that the bride apparently bore a dragon mark. That fact alone meant the family had to be all the more careful. Saryu grew thoughtful. Dragon marks were rare and sacred. The kingdom of Tanya, after all, is the dragon country, founded with the aid of dragons. Among the royal family, only a chosen few carried those scale-like tattoos. To wed someone with such a mark was the highest of honors. A servant entered then, bowing deeply. Word had arrived. Lord Vandal would be making a visit. Saryu nearly leapt out of his seat. That bastard was probably imagining me panicking right now and savoring every moment of it. The servant, unbothered, explained that Lord Vandal only wished to offer his congratulations as quickly as possible to his best friend. Grumbling, Saryu muttered that he'd have to inform Miss Satone at once. The servant warned him not to overstay his welcome, 15 minutes at most, or he'd barge in himself. Saryu ignored the warning but still looked nervous as he stood before Miss Satone's chambers. Entering a lady's bedroom made his palms sweat. He knocked softly. When she invited him in, he found her seated gracefully, smiling with a warmth that reached her eyes. She thanked him for his efforts earlier, and Saryu, flustered, stumbled over his words. He had only come to say goodnight. To his surprise, Miss Satone wondered if she ought to have visited him instead. He nearly shouted his denial, waving his hands frantically. That wasn't it at all. Gathering himself, he assured her that if there was anything inconvenient about the mansion, she had only to tell him and he would take care of it. Relief eased his shoulders when she accepted. Everyone here had already been kind enough to her. That reminded him of Eston, her maid, who had been weeping joyously during the ceremony. Eston had also confided the cruel treatment Miss Satone had suffered in her former household. Meager meals, broken possessions, even torn clothing. She had endured such misery for 2 years. Saryu studied her now, marveling at how serenely she carried herself. She showed no trace of bitterness. She thanked him instead, her gratitude overflowing for saving her during the disastrous engagement with Prince Arios, and then going so far as to ask her to be his consort. Saryu nearly choked. If anything, he insisted she was the one settling for a bear-like man, a prince in name only. Miss Satone covered her mouth, a soft laugh slipping out. Her apology only made his ears burn hotter. When she turned back to him, her eyes shined. He hadn't changed at all, she said, exactly as she had imagined. Saryu blinked. In confusion, had they met before? She asked instead if it was truly okay for her to be his bride. His heart stumbled. She was far too good for him, but before he could say so, the clock chimed. He panicked. Rising to his feet, he excused himself. Just before leaving, she hesitated, asked if his dragon mark troubled him. Miss Satone looked down. He admitted that if he claimed it didn't bother him at all, it would be a lie. But not that much. Then she asked if he thought it was disgusting. Saryu shook his head firmly. She explained that some people did. Some even called it repulsive, a sacred mark reduced to an object of scorn. Saryu murmured that it wasn't true, not really, but his gaze drifted elsewhere. The words about disgust still echoed in his mind, and his brow furrowed. Some gentleman, like that guy, who would call a mark cherished by another nation disgusting. His jaw tightened, his expression darkening. That bastard. He caught himself softening. He couldn't let Miss Satone mistake his silence for indifference. He wanted to know he was different from those people, that he would never belittle her. Dragons were the heart of Tanya's history, and those who bore the dragon mark were precious in his eyes. A gentle smile rose to his lips as he resolved himself. If Miss Satone didn't mind, with the kindest smile of his life, he asked if he would show it to him. Her eyes widened, color blooming across her cheeks. She seemed startled. You want to see it? Saryu's heart skipped. Had he phrased it strangely? She faltered, fidgeting with her hands. She admitted she wasn't quite prepared, yet still, she wanted to show him. Hesitantly, her gaze lowered and she gestured toward her chest. The meaning struck him like a lightning bolt. His face turned crimson. The chest, the valley. He clutched at his head, stammering an apology. If he saw that now, it would be bad.
dangerous even. Improper fantasies already threatened to run wild. Miss Satoan exhaled softly, still turned slightly away. If the prince insisted, she whispered, then would he like to see it? Her hands moved to her clothes, as though ready to reveal. A strangled sound tore from Saryu's throat, half embarrassment, half panic. Retreat! This was impossible. He scrambled for composure and bowed his head. With desperate haste, he excused himself, promising to see her tomorrow, and practically fled the room. Behind him, Miss Satoan hid a smile, her lips curving with quiet amusement. Outside, Raoul's voice thundered, demanding to know why his captain's face was red. Saryu flailed for an excuse, his protest echoing down the corridor. It was a misunderstanding, nothing more. Far from the flustered prince, another figure walked the cobbled streets of the capital. A tall, handsome man in a long coat moved with easy confidence toward the grand carriage that awaited him. Beyond lay the royal castle where his old friend resided. His thoughts, however, lingered on the woman who had captured his friend's heart. So this is the one, he mused with a smile, eyes glinting with anticipation.